Yep.
Eric, would you like a packet?
Thanks, boy. Appreciate that. Shall we? I think we shall. Okay. Good evening, everyone. You are at a Plan Commission, City of Wausau, September 17th. It is 5 p.m. Tuesday at City Hall. And we have a quorum of 5 here tonight. Up first, we've got the item number 1 is approval of the meeting minutes for July 16th and August 20th. We didn't have them in the packet last time, so I would entertain a motion to accept those. Motion from Brueggemann, second from Watson. Any corrections, any changes, any suggestions? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes have passed. Up next is a public hearing, and public hearing is for discussion for rezoning 1 Menard Plaza from part of a suburban mixed-use SMU zoning district to a light industrial LI zoning district to allow for self-storage units, Menard Inc. And I think I saw Nick Brenner here today. So this is the first opportunity to speak publicly on this item.
Absolutely. Good evening. Nick Brenner, 5101 Menard Drive, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm a real estate representative for Menards here on behalf of Menards. So the request here today is to rezone the property, as mentioned, to industrial. This is to allow for Menards to proceed with a self-storage development. It would be a mix between climate-controlled and non-climate controlled units. And I can get into that a little bit more, but really want to start off tonight by essentially saying that this property, it's been 20 years. We're coming up on 20 years that this property has sat vacant. We have had very little interest and inquiries from any potential buyers of this particular property throughout those 20 years. I understand tonight that city staff is recommending denial of this request, and they're basing that mainly on the fact that it doesn't comply or isn't consistent with the comprehensive plan, which I understand that. It's a theory and a guide that needs to be taken into account, but it is also that it's a plan, right? There's a lot of plans that are put together that don't work out for one reason or another. For example, whenever I buy and develop properties on behalf of Menards, I put a plan together too. I put a concept plan together for that particular property. You know, I placed a Menards store on the property and I fill it in with different users and uses and make sure that we're putting the Menards store in the right portion of the property and make sure it's all cohesive. But I'll raise my hand and say that not one time has the final development of a property 100% matched the concept plan that I put in place at the front of the project. And there are a number of factors that play into that, just like any other plan. The real estate is no different. You don't know who the end user is going to be. You don't know if they want to come, who want to come, when they're going to come. So you do the best you can with what you got, and you move forward with that. And while we're talking about plans, I can tell you that there was no plan ever put in place for this remnant piece of parcel. You know, the one plan that ever was on here once it went from a Menards store was to design the interchange. When the state decided this was excess property, they didn't look at the topography of this property. They didn't look at the access, the size of the property, the shape of the property, the visibility of the property. They essentially just said, here you go, Menards, here's your remnant piece back. Good luck. And Menards has taken steps over the last 20 years to make this more marketable. We bought the portion that Kmart used to sit on to add to the size of this parcel to make it more marketable. We added a new access point onto South 28th Street to help alleviate the traffic concerns that we had, accessibility concerns that we had through a number of conversations with prospective buyers. over the years, we have spent more time, more effort reaching out to companies on this particular property to trying to find a user for it than we have on most of our other properties. Typically, we sit back and just let the calls come in because, the property we buy is high, good commercial ground. People want to go next to Menards. This just hasn't been the case for this property. So to the point now where, what do we do? It's been 20 years, as I mentioned. Do we continue to sit on this and let the property just sit there? And my answer to that is no, we got to figure something else out. And that's why today, we're here today proposing the self-storage facility, and why we're thrilled to do it, because Menards is a self-storage operator. We have about 50 facilities across the Midwest that will be open here in the next year or two. We're building about 20 right now this year that are very similar to this one. And that's why, we're excited, because we can use the self-storage, we can use the property. And the reason why self-storage is such a good fit is because you can shape the self-storage facility around the uniqueness of the shape of the property, where you can't do it with, a box. Like a Menards store wouldn't fit on this property very well because it's a rectangle, right? You can't really shape that building to comply with the awkward shape of the property. Self-storage, you can do that. So going back to the self-storage facility as a whole, as I mentioned, it's a mixture between climate controlled and non-climate controlled. That's what we're proposing. The climate control building is actually 2 stories, and we're proposing 2 stories because of the topography and using that to the advantage of this facility. As you can see on the plan that's on the screen now, what we would do is the topography is about 17 feet difference from north to south. So what we would do is we would allow people accessing from the north to enter the top level of the facility. People coming from the south would access the facility on the bottom floor. So that's how we're utilizing that topography, that 17 feet of difference, to the advantage for this particular layout. The rest of the units, you can tell we have shaped around kind of the weird awkwardness of the lot. We have a retention pond, which is going to be needed, also proposed. All this would have to be engineered, obviously, to make sure that it would comply with current design regulations. Even with, I also submitted, I think, a rendering that shows from, if you go down one more. So this is essentially the view that you would see from Stewart Ave. As I mentioned, this is a 2-story building, right? You can barely see the top of the self-storage, that top floor, showing you the drastic, change in elevation on this property. So from the main commercial corridor in Stewart Avenue, you can barely see the facility. I bring this up because this has been one of the biggest problems with getting people interested in this property is you can't see it from the road. South 28th Street, a little bit more visibility, but that's not the main corridor that people want to be seen from at Stewart Avenue. So that is one of the biggest problems that we have with selling this for commercial use. But from a self-storage perspective, it's not as big of a deal. And that's why, again, this use fits this property so well. So that's the general concept of what we're proposing. I understand the request here for the rezone to industrial. I'll be honest with you, I wish I didn't have to do it. I wish we could, have a different zoning or something else, because I know industrial zoning isn't the most ideal zoning to go to. But to go forward with this project is essentially what we were forced to do. I also understand that as part of industrial zonings, there's a lot of concern that comes with what other uses could be brought by changing this to industrial, and we want to eliminate any of those concerns. That's why in my narrative I said we would be willing to essentially self-impose a restriction on ourselves that says that we would only use this for self-storage operations without the consent of the city. So we're trying to address that head on by not opening up the door to all these other uses that no one else wants, and really narrowing into the fact that we want this to be a self-storage facility. So with that being said, really just want to, and I really implore you all to look past the comprehensive plan in this specific instance. I know it's a great guide, but the property itself just is so challenged from a development perspective that it just is very difficult to go down that path. But also to look past the straight zoning of industrial and look at the property itself, the challenges of the property, and how well the self-storage complex in this facility fits within this property. It's going to redevelop a vacant piece of ground that's been vacant for 20 years, underserved, underutilized, however you want to say it. It's going to put a use on the property that is needed by the community. I know that because we do receive inquiries from people in this community asking for self-storage. And it's going to be operated by a long-time, reliable company in Menards. This will be a Menards self-storage facility. It's going to be operated by our store. There's an extension of our store, so you're going to have that local presence just like the store does. It's going to increase the tax base in this community, and it's not going to require any additional public services. So it's a lot of positives at the end of the day. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
So this is two parts. So we got the public hearing, and then we'll have discussion next. So and second opportunity, second call for public comment here at a public hearing for rezoning One Menard Plaza from an SMU to a light industrial. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and committee members, for a few moments to speak. Mary Ann and I moved into this community in 1970, and since 1975 have basically been developing on the west side of Wausau. I say that because I believe,
I'm sorry, just for the record,
Yeah.
so we have you on.
One Corporate Drive
And your name.
and Chuck Dorsey.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it is quite obvious that this piece of property and the corridor have become very important to our city. I have called it the gateway to our community a number of times. And what people see as they enter our community, this leaves a positive impression if we do it right. Your current zoning in this area has been very successful in accomplishing just that. Changing the zoning to allow for 100+ metal storage units would actually take us backwards. The current zoning has moved us forward and will continue to move us forward. There has been multi-million dollars of investment from businesses and the medical community within this corridor, and that generates tax base. Just two of the neighbors into this Menards property, ENT and Surgical Associates, have generated $17.3 million in tax base, and they pay over $445,000 a year in taxes. Why should we then mess with this zoning? Changing it to make storage sheds in the neighborhood to these neighbors. That would be a catastrophe, and you can add several other businesses to that list as well. Our newest neighbors, which would be the Orthopedic Surgery Clinic and the new Nicolay Regional Bank, would be two examples of that. Now, that's what I would call, if you would, a significant upgrade to the cosmetics of a good development. Now, there is a better alternative. Menards can just simply hold the property for its permitted use. Our company is holding just as much property, if you would, across the street for that exact reason. Holding property is nothing new. Bringing the site up would be a second solution. Adding fill to the site to make it more attractive to users. Orthopedic surgery did that. They added about 8 feet. Quick Trip across the street, 10 to 12 feet. And yes, they will move forward in terms of removing an eyesore by doing that. But let's not let's not touch, if you would, our zoning. Our staff is right on. Keep this neighborhood safe from bad development. Keep our corridor first in class. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more call for the public hearing on the rezoning of One Menard Plaza from an SMU to light industrial. Last call, anyone else? All right, that closes the public hearings section, and now I'll open it up for discussion and possible action on said 1 Menard Plaza from SMU zoning district to a light industrial to allow for self-storage units. And I would turn it over to our staff, Andrew, who has a report.
Thank you. Just want to run through the staff report on this. So as it's been stated before, this is a rezoning from suburban mixed use to light industrial. And in the report, there is a description of each of those zoning types on the first page. And with this, what we do is we look back in our zoning code and we have, we have criteria that we have to examine when it comes to making a change. And we've laid those out in the report. And one of the main things we do is we look at the compliance with the comprehensive plan. And that's just kind of a look in the future, saying what do we want this area to be. And as of with our comprehensive plan right now, that area is zoned as suburban commercial. There are some nearby industrial properties that Menards did mention in their report. One of those to the south is, that one, Brad. One of those to the south is actually in the town of Stettin. We don't have control of that. And then the 2 parcels to the east across the highway, that's where the Builder's First Source off of 24th Ave is. Those are legacy industrial, and in a comprehensive plan, those are shown as suburban commercial. So, and the idea is that with the comprehensive plan, we're trying to move towards that type of development. The move to light industrial would actually be in the opposite direction. Then we also look at the compatibility with existing neighborhood character. And I think it's quite evident on the zoning map that, currently that whole intersection is SMU except for the that purple there, which is the PUD on the corner. But it would, that is going to follow in the development style of everything else. And in the surrounding area, there's a gas station, 2 medical office buildings, a new bank, office buildings, small retail stores, sit-down restaurant, a fast food restaurant, and a large box retailer, which, if you're looking at a description of suburban mixed use, is pretty spot on. And then also to consider is the, appropriateness. This is a high-traffic corridor, both at the street level of 28th and Stewart Ave, and also with the highway ramps above. And I did scroll down a bit, Brad. I did include some images of Menard's other properties where they, are developing storage units. Just to give an idea, I didn't know they were going to offer a rendering, but that was very helpful as well. And I picked these last 2 here because it was kind of a situation where the road was elevated above the storage units. Obviously, it'd probably be a little bit more elevated off of 28th, but that kind of gives you an idea. These are in a more rural area, but it should be about the same. So really, that appearance from really high traffic roads does not seem appropriate for the urban form there. So staff is not recommending approval of this rezoning due to the nonconformance with the comprehensive plan and the inconsistency with the surrounding SMU zoning. That's all I have. So any questions?
Thank you. Questions here for Andrew. Alder Larson.
I don't have any questions for Andrew, but I don't believe I'm going to support a zoning change on this as well. I just can't see, I think everywhere you turn, there's people building storage units, and I think that I would not like to see storage units here. I'd like to see something more as Andrew said, neighborhood friendly. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? So if this fact passes, it goes to council, if it doesn't, it doesn't go to council. It does go to council, it does not, it does. It does either way. Okay. Mr. Brueggemann,
Does it have to be zoned light industrial to accomplish that? I'm thinking.
Yes.
Down by the old, down off the river, we just have them.
On Third
That
Street.
just got built on Third Street not too long ago.
Yep, those are, so actually it would have to be zoned light industrial, and it'd have to come back for a conditional use permit as well.
Okay,
That is the only zoning where that is allowed. So,
Okay.
I mean, the closest zoning class there, it's allowed.
and then the second question relative to the design. I hate placing restrictions as part of it. I know this is just a zoning request, but do we have any opportunity to work with the developer on the property? I understand both sides of this issue. It's been vacant for 20 years. We have a lot of other remnant parcels that have been vacant for 20 years. And while we've got some really great developers that have brought in some great projects, they've also sat vacant for a very long time. We could be sitting here, or I could be sitting here as a citizen of Wausau, and that's going to be a vacant lot 30 years from now. What opportunity do we have to help work with developers to kind of come to fruition on those development plans, or bring something that's more palatable than just metal structures?
Well, if it's with this specific project, I guess this body would have most control when it comes to a conditional use permit. If it's the city trying to propose something to a private developer, I mean, I think you would need to have, the city would have to have some kind of skin in the game, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, we have incentivized properties in different parts of the city with TIF districts. But I guess the question is, you know, there used to be a TIF district out in this area that closed. I don't know, you know, what the possibility of opening a new one is for this area or for that type of development. You know, I guess that's a policy question that can be discussed, but yeah, in term, going back to an earlier point, the Third Street ones, I think there is industrial zoning up in that area as well. It's kind of a pocket. There's a lot of industrial zoning that's sort of legacy industrial along the railroad tracks, formerly along the river. So it's, you know, kind of scattered in the city. And, you know, we've tried in a lot of areas to move away from industrial to go to commercial and mixed use and residential. So, but yeah, I guess, you know, we had talked about different options for the zoning. Our current zoning code does require the industrial zoning, unless you went to a PUD, which is flexible, we know that. But when we looked at the criteria for that, it didn't really fit. You know, we don't use PUD just to sort of get around our other zoning regulations. I mean, there needs to be a good reason for proposing that, which in this case, we didn't necessarily feel that that was appropriate.
Thank you.
Alder Watson.
I don't, I guess, have any other comment, but if I would like to vote against this, we still have to vote in the affirmative?
No,
Or do we not have to vote
to
at all?
pass this, it would be in the affirmative. Whether we pass it or not, this would be a recommendation. It would still go to council on October 8th, I believe, 8th, yes.
Okay.
But yeah, usually the motions are made in the affirmative to approve it, and then if you want to say yes, you say yes. If you don't want it, then you say no, as opposed to making a motion to deny it. We try to stay away from that just to avoid confusion.
So I make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion. We had a motion on this already. I don't think so.
There wasn't a motion on there.
We had a motion from Brueggemann and second by Watson, right?
Oh,
Okay, that was on the minutes. Okay, motion from Watson to approve. Would entertain a second. Second from Brueggemann. Further discussion? All those in favor of approving or forwarding the approval recommendation on the rezoning of 1 Menard Plaza from SMU to light industrial, signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
No.
5 noes, 6 noes, 5 noes.
5 noes. That will be going to council on the 8th, and they'll make an independent decision there based on those recommendations. Up next is another public hearing on a rezoning. This is item 4 for discussion of rezoning of 406 Winton Street from part of a heavy industrial zoning district to urban mixed-use zoning to allow for indoor sales and service. And this would be Mid-City Precision Property. Anyone desiring to speak on this item? I've got to ask 3 times. Second opportunity. Looks like we've got a taker from Mr. Denzin.
Yes.
Please state your name and you can,
Scott Denzine, Mid-City Precision. Actually, the owning company would be MCP 2023. It's a LLC
got it?
within our company. We're trying to rezone the office portion, which had been resale for 45 years, but has to be rezoned now to be a storefront. And we're asking for permission. It's been drawn, surveyed, approved by inspections. Just need to get the formalities to keep going forward. Not a whole lot much more to say. I mean, I know that's the type of things you want along the riverfront, so if I got my factory behind it, I'll make it pretty along the street.
All right. Thanks
Not
for
really
your-
much more to say.
All right, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Because it's a public hearing, we have to offer it 3 times. So going a second time, anyone desiring to speak on this public hearing section here for rezoning 406 Winton? Going 3 times. Anyone else interested in speaking at 406 Winton? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing section and we'll open this up for discussion and possible action for rezoning 406 Winton Street from part of a heavy industrial zoning district to an urban mixed-use UMU zoning district to allow for indoor sales and service. And that is Mid-City Precision MCP 2023 LLC.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Brueggemann, second from Watson. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving this and sending it to council for rezoning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. That'll be on the October 8th council agenda. Thanks for coming in. Item 6, discussion and possible action on conditional use for 260 South 17th Avenue to allow for an instant oil change service facility in an SMU suburban mixed-use zoning district, Valvoline LLC. And I think Andrew was going to talk to that unless we have. All right.
I'll be
Go
real
ahead,
quick, I promise.
Okay.
So this is the second meeting we have for a conditional use permit. So you remember the last meeting, it was just the public hearing portion. After that, staff takes any input from that, and we look at our criteria, which is on the second page of the report. We have findings we have to consider. Is it in harmony with the comprehensive plan? Yes. Would it result in an adverse impact? No. Consistency of land use? Yes. Adequately served by utilities? Yes. And public benefits outweigh any adverse impacts? Yes. There was no substantial evidence at the public hearing, and staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit as proposed.
Thank you. And I do see a Valvoline rep here. If anyone has comments, motion from Brueggemann,
Second.
second by Larson. Further comments, questions? All those in favor of accepting, and this does not have to go to council. We approve it right here. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that one passes unanimously. Item 7, discussion and possible action on landmarking the former DAUV, and that's the Deutsche, I don't have the exact German spelling there, but it's an acronym. And it's a building at 540 South 3rd Avenue. And I'll set that up for Brad.
Okay.
Set it up.
Thank you. I'll also skip the pronunciation, even though I could take an attempt at it. But, so yeah, the building's at 540 South 3rd Avenue. And there's some background information in the packet it's a former German hall. And the Historic Preservation Commission of the City of Wausau held a public hearing on whether to landmark this building. And, their criteria is whether the building is historically significant or not. There was a public hearing and some discussion. The minutes are in the packet. I guess the unanimous conclusion was that it is historically significant and deserves landmarking. So then the process to do that is for them, for the Plan Commission here to look at a slightly different set of criteria from the ordinance. And this is all in Chapter 2.82 of our municipal code. And those are listed in the staff report, ABC. Basically looking at whether landmarking is going to affect the development of the city and whether it's in keeping with the general public health, safety, and welfare. And, I guess the point is made in our ordinance that preserving historical assets is in the public interest. That's written in our ordinance. So that's, I guess, the basis of the recommendation from our Historic Preservation Commission. And looking at these 3 criteria for the Plan Commission, I guess staff didn't see any reason for denial. The next step would be to move it on to City Council, where they'd take a look at both recommendations from the Historic Preservation Commission as well as the Plan Commission and make the final vote on whether to landmark it or not. So I guess that's where we're at.
All right, I would entertain a motion to landmark the DAUV building. Motion from Brueggemann and a second from Larson.
Second.
Okay,
If I can just add.
go ahead.
Okay, thanks. There was a letter in there too from the property owner that was opposed to the landmarking. I don't see them here this evening. That was provided to the Historic Preservation Commission, but again, they went ahead and thought it was significant enough to unanimously recommend in favor of it. The commission and the council does have that power to designate properties as historic, again, following our ordinances. So I guess that's just a little more background information on it.
So that letter is in here. That's Emmerich and Associates is the owner. She indicates she's in the process of negotiating with a potential buyer and feels that landmarking designation will detract from that process. Any further discussion? I would with a motion and a second, all those in favor of landmarking and sending that recommendation to council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I'm a no. So how many no's was that? 1, 2, 3. So we have a
3 noes and 2 ayes, I believe.
3 to 2. So that still goes forward to council. It was a 2 to 3 vote in the negative. And up next is discussion and possible action for the specific implementation plan for 1327, 1331, 1333, 1337, 1341, 1355, 1361, 1363, and 1371 South 8th Avenue. and 706 Fleet Street, also known as 8th Avenue Workforce Housing for Colby and Colby. I would entertain a motion. Well, I guess we can open it up for Brad first to give us a little setup on that.
Sure. All right, I'm bringing up the site plan. There's a lot of plans as a separate link. They weren't necessarily in your printed packet, but online, there's a whole architectural set of plans and some site plans, but I guess we'll just start with this title page. We do have representatives here as well to fill in some blanks. Maybe I'll skip down to the end where it shows the site plan. So the process is that they came to us before with the general plans, and they were approved for the apartment complex. These are the specific plans. There's more detailed site plans. There's building elevations included. The specific plans generally follow the previous plans. There was some different arrangement of the buildings, and the unit count decreased slightly. There's still over 100 units. There's 102 units versus the 108 previously proposed, but they looked at parking issues, and they will provide some parking across the street at the manufacturing facility. That was discussed last time. I guess looking at the staff report, we just noted a few things, mainly, and these things are generally approved after the specific plans by staff, like a stormwater management plan. We'll have to look at that in engineering. A lighting plan would be helpful just to see where the light may be spilling off the property in some locations, particularly on the very east side where the parking lot butts up against the property line. And then signage, I'm sure they don't have an exact, design or plan for that yet, and that can come later usually. Staff generally follows our ordinance on this sort of thing to approve or look at the signs that would normally be allowed in our standard zoning districts. So those are just some notes that other things will be submitted later for staff review. There were a few comments also that there are some, I guess, question marks or some recommendations by staff on this particular development. I'll go to that section and bring those up quickly. One thing from the plan is the metal building materials weren't necessarily specified. We didn't have spec sheets or anything on the metal siding. They will be using a variety of different types of siding, some smart siding, there's glass on the buildings, but the metal accents, in our zoning code, there's different types of metal. We would just request that the metal be class 3, which means it's architectural and decorative, and not the class 4, which is noted as non-decorative or corrugated metal. That's generally not allowed in our standard zoning, so we would request that, that slightly higher grade metal siding be used. It was suggested that the landscaping plan could be amended so that that parking lot on the far east side just include a landscape buffer on the property line, just to block some of the headlights that may be using that parking lot. And then the final thing is a sidewalk along 8th Avenue. If we go back to the plans, they're proposing right now 3 crossings of 8th Avenue in the middle of the block, and there's no sidewalk sort of running along 8th Avenue. So engineering thought that, a sidewalk running along the edge of the development would help sort of collect people, and the best solution would be just to cross at one point, perhaps across from the parking lot that they have on the manufacturing facility, rather than have these 3 mid-block crossings. So that's basically the gist of the staff recommendations on the plans that were submitted.
Okay, so did we transmitted these to the developer?
Yes, I believe they were emailed to them ahead of time.
So do we need agreement before we move this forward, or do we, where's your recommendation?
I guess we could ask for any comments from the
I have
developers?
some comments.
Sure, okay, go ahead. Alder Larson.
I've been working with Jeff and Mike from the start from this, and I question about this sidewalk running parallel. That's going to add extra expense to the people that are gifting this building to the city. And my question is, it says a sidewalk running parallel to 8th Avenue should be added. Is there an ordinance that says there must be a sidewalk there? Or can they just put their walkways out like they had intended?
Well, again, according to city engineering, this wasn't necessarily a best practice. I mean, I guess in theory, we could approve it without it. It's not, I don't think, desirable for the public in terms of safe crossings. Mid-block crossings, they should be marked. They should be in locations that are safe. And, having 3 in a row isn't necessarily a best practice. And, in the future, if 8th gets rebuilt, I think our ordinances would say that there would be a sidewalk there. This is, we're kind of retrofitting an existing site. It's a redevelopment site, so, we're not necessarily planning on rebuilding the street immediately, but
So in a sense, they could go ahead with this project and not put a sidewalk there right away. That's a yes or no question.
that's up to you guys.
Yeah. I think it would be up to however the plan commission wants to move forward. They could, provide an approval, that these things, these recommendations, these requirements are put into the plan, and then that would.
Well, perhaps we could hear from Mike or Jeff
Sure.
then. Because I know they had some questions on the landscaping as well.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Mike Tomsick, VP of Finance at Colby and Colby, accompanied by Jeff Deloney, our president. And please go to page 1 of that whole packet. That had sidewalks in there, walkways in there, and they were specifically designed with 3. I know it's kind of small. You're going to have to really look at it to find them there. But those were intentionally set up to have the walkways, so that way there would be crossings that would go to the entrances for our employees to enter the plant. So you do see, yes, there are 3 of them there. Anybody who's gone down 11th knows that there's a number of crosswalks there that are, quite frankly, not marked by the city. We're actually painting them ourselves to make sure that the crossings are safe. We've had people in a parking lot that's been there for over 25 years. People have been crossing all hours of the day. We've never had any problems. I guess, one thing is you got sidewalks there, and where are they going to go? Where are they going to go? They're going to go to the south. It's going to empty out to a street that has no sidewalks. If they go to the north, they're going to empty out to a street that has no sidewalks. There historically has not been any sidewalks on properties south of Chalice. When we had our neighbor meeting, that was one thing that was specifically brought up to say, is this going to have sidewalks? Because frankly, those have been around a long time, know some of the angst that happened when they did some of the roads south of Thomas Street and north of Chalice and mandated curb and gutter and sidewalk. So some of the people in our neighborhood have said, we don't want that. So that was right from Lou, you heard it. You were there at that neighbor meeting that we had.
I did, yes.
And the other thing is the walkways were designed with the impervious percentages that I know are the mandates. I know you guys don't make that up, but that's why this whole plot changed, is that some of the, I guess you could argue, is it excessive regulation or whatever, that has forced us to be very tight on the space, and actually we had to get creative because we cut a whole building out of that thing and still have 102 apartments. And again, we'd certainly suggest that the Plan Commission does not include the recommendation to include the sidewalks. And then likewise, again, the crosswalks, like I said, come down by our plant, you'll see all sorts of crosswalks going across 11th Avenue, which is definitely the traffic is higher on that street. Again, we intend to use as much of this building as possible for our workforce, and they're going to be crossing the street to go to work. So, again, we certainly believe that having 3 of them out there appropriately marked does make sense, and that is in the plan. Okay.
Okay, did you want to speak to the landscaping? Right?
Yeah, it was interesting because there was a low-level landscape buffer on the outside, and again, I think there you go to page 102, and it was on the edge of that parking lot, and so you'd have to scroll up there. Parking lot, I don't know if you see on that, I assume it's that parking lot right about where your cursor is. There is already 7 shrubs drawn in on the landscape plan, and they are good-sized shrubs. They're not full trees, and there's also the fence there. So anybody, again, I invite you to drive on that parking lot, and you will see there's a lot of woods on the back side. We have a lit parking, a light on the pole right now, too, and you can see we know how to place lights so that the spillage does not go into the neighbor's yard. So, again, we'll certainly give you the lighting plan when it's ready, but, we've been lighting parking lots for a few years around here, and I think we kind of know what we're going to do once it's ready. But there, it didn't seem to make much sense. I know there can be lights in there. If we need to find some shrubs that are a little more mature, instead of planting some of them that are, younger, we can certainly do that. But when you take a look at that development, if you add up, we're putting 47 trees and 329 shrubs on there already. That's a lot. And compare that with other municipalities, what their requirements are. We're going to spend a lot, well over 6 figures on landscaping that alone. So again, I guess we don't see why we would need to put a little berm there. Now, if it's green space already, So again, I mean, we have no problem, if the motion says to make sure that it's Class 3 siding materials, we'll certainly comply with that, but we would urge the Plan Commission to not include the other 3 recommendations in their motion going to council.
So I do have a question on the way the buildings were arranged. So it look like they're now in there on an angle. That was done for a particular reason.
Trying to meet the impervious surface. We do have our representatives here from the architects' firms. Got to say your name, Gabe.
My name is Gabriel Lemke. I'm the architectural designer on this site. Our main goal to have the buildings tilted that way was the shape of the buildings actually lent themselves better to fitting more parking on the site when they were tilted at a slight angle. Again, it was really done for the impervious surface calculations and trying to get that number as low as possible, more green space.
Okay.
I would say also it gives, as you would think of driving down the street, it also gives you a little bit more better aesthetics, rather than one straight line, one wall in front of your face. Now you got a few more offsets going on that your eyes are not drawn to the straight line, right? We got a little bit of a residential neighborhood going on here, right? So we got to be conscious of that kind of thing.
Okay. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been working with Jeff and Mike even before this was made public, and I know how sincere they are, and with this project. I know how they want to get this going, and so I would make the motion to move this forward minus the landscaping and the sidewalk provisions in this. Is that a second already?
All right, a motion from Larson to accept as modified, and second by Brugman. Brad, did you get all the changes?
Yeah, it looks like on the bullets, yeah, the landscaping and sidewalk and the crosswalks are related to the sidewalk, so I guess we'll scratch that one. So it's just the building materials from class 4 to class 3.
You're okay with building materials?
Yeah, they were originally going to be Class 3.
Class 3,
Yeah.
okay. So no standing screws, exposed screws. Okay, all right, good. Any further comments, concerns, questions? All righty, then motion by Larson, second by Brueggemann. All those in favor of accepting the specific implementation plan as amended here tonight, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, and thanks, staff. I know this is, we found out it's a lot more complicated than adding on to a factory, that's for darn sure. So appreciate, sometimes we quiz the arc, why do we have to do that kind of stuff? And it certainly was an eye-opening experience for us. So again, thanks to staff.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next up is our next meeting on Tuesday, October 15th, same place, 5 PM, right here. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Brueggemann, Watson.
Aye.
See you later.
Oh, yeah.
That's why he was jumping on so quickly.
Well, you're done by 6.